Hotep, I'm Dr. Gloria Latimore-Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O Art of Life show. The title of this show is Art and Transformation, and we might get transformed in the course of doing this show because I have these institutions with me, and I'll be interviewing them around art and their involvement with it, and I want to introduce the ladies first. And then, of course, our gentleman, Debra Hand. Debra Hand is a well-known, renowned artist, a sculptor, a multimedia artist, and I'm happy to greet you.
Thank you for having me.
And Diane Dinkins-Carr, who is president of the Southside Community Arts Center and who just pulled the most marvelous function together and made it a huge success, and I'm looking forward to it being repeated. We want to talk about that, Diane.
Yes, it's a pleasure being here.
And then, of course, Daniel Texidor Parker. How much can I say about you? I've known you for forever, and you have done this marvelous, monumental work that I didn't even know you had it in you. So now we'll talk to you first, having introduced the ladies and acknowledged that they're part of this program. I want to ask you how it came to be, how this work came to be, because I knew you as part of the faculty at Olive Harvey College, one of the city colleges of Chicago, years and years ago. And I used to say that you wore the gross national product on your back.
Yes, I
so
thought of
I
that.
knew that you were a collector of beautiful things, but you wore them. And then after a while, I began to hear these stories about this art collection that you were acquiring. And then when I got to see it, it took my breath away. I am just still awestruck. And I would like to know how you came to do that.
First of all, I would like to thank you for having me here. I'm delighted. Well, wow. You know, that book, African Art, The Diaspora and Beyond, it was a journey. It was a journey. I didn't start out thinking I would be a collector. Collecting just eased in and crept into my life and into my being. Vis-a-vis my mother and vis-a-vis Dr. Burroughs, Margaret Burroughs at DuSable High School. My mother would take us to secondhand shops, us being her children, and in addition to buying the furniture, she would buy art. And me being the oldest, I was sort of the custodian of the art, to make sure that the little kids wouldn't break it. And I began to see art, to look at art. And then Dr. Burroughs, who was my art teacher at DuSable, she taught us so much more than just art. She taught us about who we were. And in teaching us about who we were, about the art of who we were, and so I unconsciously began to develop a whole repertoire of this thing we call art, this thing of art and culture of our people, black people. And then hence comes the 60s, and Black is Beautiful. Well, I already knew it. I already knew it. And so it was natural then for me to amass these works, so to surround myself with them, because they nurtured me. And hence the collection in its infancy stage began to develop full bloom.
Even though I can't show the pages in this book in the way that I would like to, and I think it would actually be a breach of security to show the pages that are devoted to your collection, because somebody would probably try to collect a part of your collection. But it is just amazing that you were able to find and to purchase and to house a museum in your own home and live in all of that beauty. And then, of course, to invite other people to share this beauty. And we thank you. I just want to thank you on behalf of the community for collecting our culture for us and keeping it safe and keeping it so that, preserving it so that we will have access to it, because too much of our culture is in the British Museum
Yes.
and other places where we don't frequent, and so consequently we are really not aware of just the extensive art and culture that we had. And to think, when you show in this book art for the home, articles that were used, art was used in daily living.
Yes.
How could you think of African people as uncivilized or savages when you saw the kind of artifacts that they lived with on a daily basis? Certainly, such people would not have taken the time to create such beauty and live with such beauty.
Well, when you're busy stealing their ideas and stealing the beauty of their culture, you don't have time to recognize those who you are stealing from. And if we as black people really understand we are the authors of culture that was stolen, we then begin to set a new paradigm for ourselves.
Now that you know, that was just about as profound a statement as I have heard. The connecting link between you and Diane and Debra is Dr. Margaret Taylor Goss Burroughs. She was my art teacher too. And I'm not ashamed that I didn't become an artist, because as you said, she taught us so much more than art.
Yes.
So that if you were in the class, you did learn who you were, and you did learn the value of your culture, and you
Absolutely.
did learn the value of your heritage. And not only did she create beautiful art, but she wrote beautiful poetry. And I
Absolutely.
seldom give a talk anywhere that I don't begin with, what shall I tell my children?
Work
Because
alike.
I just think
Yes,
there's just
yes.
nothing better to say as something that gives a sort of survey and a kind of a shorthand notation of what our history is.
Yes, it should be the mantra, what shall I tell my children who are
Right,
black,
right.
particularly now when we see what's happening in our communities and we don't know the good things that are happening in our communities, not just the things they put on the news, but other positive, rich, and some of them which you're going to bring out tonight, of course.
Now, Diane Dinkins-Carr, her connection to Dr. Burroughs, she's always happy to tell, because Dr. Burroughs is in some sense the midwife who brought her into being. So I'd like Diane to talk about her relationship with Dr. Burroughs and the work she's doing now in her behalf.
Dr. Burroughs, Margaret, people always say, why do you call her Margaret? I guess it's just a habit because she introduced my parents. So if it wasn't for Margaret, Dr. Burroughs, I wouldn't be here today. Both of my parents were involved with the Art Center. They used to go to Margaret's home. She used to have some great conversations in her kitchen for artists and collectors. And that's where my parents met, at Margaret's home. And being the board president and chair of Southside Community Arts Center, as many know, Dr. Margaret Burroughs is one of the co-founders. So Margaret has been in my life for over 50 years now. So every time I look at the Art Center, every time I look at my sister and I, we have to thank Margaret for her bringing my parents together, and also being one of the co-founders of the oldest African American art center in the country. So that's a great, great establishment and just profound institution that is still open after, this is our 70th anniversary. And Margaret and the other people that she'd worked with to start the Art Center was very, very, astonishing what she did back in the 30s. Because they came together in 1938 and our doors opened in 1940. And for her to have this dream of having an art center on the south side of Chicago back in the 30s. No one was thinking of that back then. And for her and the other co-founders, George Neal and Prescott and all that, it was really, really something big, and we're keeping the legacy alive.
Yes.
Well, I can tell you this. I can add, not only is it the oldest, but it is the most innovative art center in the country. Because what the Southside Community Art Center just did at the Harris Theater has never been equaled and will probably never be duplicated unless you do it. Please tell the audience about this particular show.
Well, February 27th, the Columbia City Ballet Company from South Carolina did a marvelous performance on Jonathan Green's work. And it was called Off the Wall and Onto the Stage, Dancing the Art of Jonathan Green. And William Starrett, who's the artistic director of Columbia City Ballet and the creator of Off the Wall, met Jonathan around 4 years ago. And him and Jonathan hit it off, and they started talking about art and dance and music. And William wanted to take one of Jonathan Green's paintings to bring it to life. Not only did he bring one painting to life, he brought 22 paintings to life. And what it is, it's a ballet, and it's a collaboration of 3 art forms: visual arts, music, and dance. And the storyline is, it talks about the Gullah culture. Jonathan Green was born in South Carolina of the Gullah culture. So that's how he paints. He tells his story, his upbringing, in his brightly colored paintings. And William took those paintings, 22 of them, and brought it to life, from Bessie Mae, of Daughters of the South, My Brother's Keepers, all these beautiful paintings. The backdrops, this production was over $1.2 million. Each backdrop was created just like the painting. And
Was that a silkscreen process?
yes, it's a silkscreen process. People can go online and they can Google Off the Wall Onto the Stage, and it tells the process of how they made the backdrops. And the performance to the public was on February 27th. But on February 26th, we did an educational component for students. And we had 1,700 students from Catholic schools, private schools, and Chicago public schools to see a shorter version of the ballet. And to have 1,700 students at the Harris Theater, if you could have seen the students' faces to see this production, it was very astonishing. I mean, Jonathan Green was there to talk about the performance. William talked to the kids about etiquette, theater etiquette. He explained the different terminology of dance, of music, and art. So not only did we bring a production to Chicago for the people of Chicago, but we reached out to 1,700 students.
And I was there with my face brightly lit, because it was astonishing to see these huge screens come down, and then to see behind them these dancers who are in exactly the same clothing, exactly the same postures, and then to hear the music begin and to see the artwork move.
And the music was a collaboration of jazz and gospel and classical music. And I think that's what made it great, because it was a diverse range of music and a diverse group of dancers too, which really, I think, took the audience off guard because they didn't know what to expect. Southside Community Art Center is an art center. So people say, well, why are you bringing a ballet? And then to see that the cast, the dancers, weren't 100% African Americans. There were Hispanics, there was whites, there were Asians, along with African Americans, dancing to these paintings.
It was amazing. And I want to reintroduce Debra Hand. I wrote down some stuff because I always want to give people all the credit that they deserve. I noticed that you did such wonderful work in this book, this art and the African diaspora, the diaspora and beyond, African art, the diaspora and beyond, because not only did you do these marvelous photographs of all of this work that you have collected, but you also gave, of course, the expository, element, which explained what it all was and
Yes.
why you collected it. But then you also gave biographical sketches
Yes.
of all the artists whose work appears in these pages. So
Absolutely.
you left no stone unturned. This is about as thorough as any work I have ever seen. And you give a lot of information, which I'm surprised that the artists were willing to give you, because you give birth dates and all kinds of stuff, and sometimes people don't share that. But Debra Hand is the most often commissioned female sculptor in Chicago when it comes to honoring African American icons. Those who own her works form a who's who list of African American icons and history makers. I have some. Her work can be found in prominent museum collections that include the Smithsonian Institution and the DuSable Museum of African American History. Now, the thing that I want to say about Debra is that you presented awards on that evening to Dr. Margaret Burroughs, who was in Cuba or somewhere traveling at the time, and so her award was accepted by someone else.
Eleanor Chapman.
Eleanor Chapman of African Travel Advisors.
Yes.
Yes. And then you also presented an award to Eleanor Roosevelt's granddaughter.
Anne Roosevelt.
Anne
yes.
Roosevelt, and you did that because?
Well, Anne Roosevelt is a big supporter of the arts. And also her grandparents was really involved with the Southside Community Arts Center. Her grandmother, Eleanor Roosevelt, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, was at our dedication in 1941.
Mm-hmm.
She was there, the TV cameras were there, so she was really involved with that. Also, President Roosevelt started the WPA, Work Progress Administration Federal Arts Project, and the Arts Center is one of the survivors of 110. So between President Roosevelt and First Lady Roosevelt, they were really, really involved with the Arts Center, part of the center's history and our legacy, because during that time in the 40s, African American artists could not show their works north
Roosevelt
or
Road.
east or west or anything. So because they were African Americans, so the only place they could exhibit was at Southside Community Arts Center. And to have the President of the United States and the First Lady involved in 1940, that was really, really exciting. And Anne Roosevelt, even though I do see her on a number of occasions, is a big supporter of the Arts Center. So that's why we honored her, because of her dedication to the arts and her grandparents.
Well, I want to tell you, now that we've gotten back around to Debra, I want to tell you that it amazed me that the award that Debra created was so perfect for the event, because your event was a multimedia event combining the 3 art forms. And she created an award, a trophy that reflected that perfectly. And I'd like for, I asked her if she knew how this program was planned, because all I saw was off the wall and onto the stage. And I did not know that there would be dancers, that there would be music, that there would be these large silkscreen replicas of the work. I didn't know that all of those things would be together.
Well, when I wanted to honor Margaret and Roosevelt, I wanted a very unique an award. And I'm sure I could have gone to a trophy shop and got a plaque made or a Lucite award. So I called up Debra and I told her, I said, Debra, I need an award for 2 individuals. So I told her what the whole thing was about. I didn't give her too much details. I told her it was off the wall onto the stage while we were, honoring them. I said, it's up to you. And Debra said, you let me do whatever I want. I said, Debra, I trust you, because I'm a collector of her work also. And I felt comfortable talking to Debra because I know Debra was not going to let us down. So I said, and I didn't even know what it was going to look like. I said, Debra, do your thing. It's up to you. I would just give you the wording, some of the basic names and the dates for you to put on the award. And what I saw that evening, because she didn't send me any pictures, she didn't, I didn't have to prove, well, I couldn't prove anything because it was the last minute, like 2 weeks before.
Right.
And when Debra came on stage, that was the first time I saw the awards, and I wasn't shocked because I know Debra does very quality work, but to see the design and the concept to fit in what we were doing, I'm like, oh my goodness, because she didn't have anything to go on. So it's her imagination and just her creativity that made the award just right for that situation and for those individuals.
All right, Debra, you may speak in defense of yourself.
Well, first of all, I want to change the word trophy into a sculptural award, because
Okay.
most people, when they come to me, it's because they know they don't want to do something traditional, and they actually want to give an heirloom to that person. So most people that come to me, it's not a football team or a baseball team. It might be the star of some professional team or somebody's lifelong work that they want to honor, or someone who is, like Diane pointed out, someone whose family has made a contribution to the arts or whatever. But Diane actually gave me more guidance than she really knew, because she knew that she wanted to celebrate the Southside Community Arts Center for having been involved with performing arts, with visual arts, and with literary arts. And so that sort of, I use dancers as a metaphor for a lot of things. And so I thought it should be a dancer, which represented the performing arts, holding a paint palette and a paintbrush, which represented the visual arts. And it was implied that a dancer could not perform without music and so forth. So it was just sort of a comprehensive piece based on guidance that Diane had given me.
And based on your dedication to Dr. Margaret Taylor Goss Burroughs, whom you refer to as your other mother in addition to your mentor.
She is my art mother.
All right.
Meaning that she literally gave birth to me as an artist. I would not, and I try to make this widely known, because one thing is that I'm so proud of her and who she is and what she's done for art in general, not in Chicago, not for Diane or for Dan or for me, but for this nation, globally, what she has done. And people have to understand, when Diane, when she keeps pinpointing the time frame that Dr. Burroughs was operating in, she's telling you something so important about Dr. Burroughs' contribution. Because at a time when we were just looked upon as sort of being the survivors of the slave era and sort of just, being downtrodden and with dogs eating us up because we wanted to, sit at the same lunch counter or have the same rights. In that era, she took responsibility for our cultural relevance. Now that is just the most, that is so important. It is just so important. It's harder to just see in today's world because you have so many contributors to the arts. But if you have been stripped of your cultural identity, then everything, the loss of dignity and the loss of so many things are not ever going to be restored until you bring them back the same way. In other words, through art, we are showing our ability to create. How profound is that? when we look at ourselves or look at the art created by African Americans or the science created or the math created, it doesn't matter. When we look at our contribution, then it gives us something in ourselves. So it's so profound that Dr. Burroughs understood that there's a time and a place for everything. And our lives were dominated by civil rights issues and so forth, and it could have so easily slipped through the cracks, our cultural relevance. But she created the first African American museum solely devoted to African American history, the first one in the world. So what does that do for a little girl growing up in Chicago to grow up knowing that there are institutions who respect who I am, where I came from, who lift me up to the world to say I have value. So when a Barack Obama can come from Chicago, an Oprah Winfrey, a Michael Jordan, when people can come to Chicago and find the kind of root system to become the kind of people that change the world, then you have to say, what is it so unique about Chicago that these people who change the whole landscape of the industries that they go into, what is it about Chicago that you can produce those kind of people? This is not like Hollywood, where you produce a bunch of stars based on hype and marketing. These are people who change the world. So many of them come from Chicago. Why? Because Chicago had Dr. Burroughs. African Americans had that kind of reference point for who they were in the world. And so beyond just what I feel personally for Dr. Burroughs, when I look at the election of Barack Obama, it happened in Chicago for a reason. That started in Chicago for a reason. He could be that bad in Chicago for a reason. Every African American who comes through Chicago to make their mark, they certainly owe Dr. Margaret Burroughs. That's for sure. And I'm one of those people whose influence, who's been influenced by her and whose life has been made better by her contribution.
Well, I can tell you that it seems to me that I hear a general theme, and that is that Dr. Margaret Burroughs has given us back to ourselves.
Yes.
This
Exactly.
is what
Yes.
you've been saying.
Yes.
In collecting this work, you are trying to give us back to ourselves,
Right.
because we're being robbed of ourselves, and not just back then, but on a daily basis, our image is being eroded. That we have so much bad press. There's so many stereotypes out about us, so that to be able to see the beauty of people of African descent, that those stereotypes must be transformed, and art is one of the means to do it, because art is the cohesion or the glue of culture. It
Yes.
holds culture even when culture does not speak. That mass,
Yes.
that urn, that sculpture, that literary work, that dance, that music, all of that is like a vessel that's holding on to it when everything else around it may be in really bad shape. We still have that. So she's giving us back to ourselves continuously and on a regular basis, and so unassuming about it. You know, that's just
Very.
and remembers. I just do not know how she remembers all of these people whose lives she has touched. She has known me forever. You know, I was just a student in her class, went to school with Ramon. Ramon Price and I were in the same division. Ramon became a really fine artist. She remembered me equally whenever she saw me when I became a teacher and brought my students to the DuSable Museum that was in her living room. She remembered who I was. She remembered I had been one of her students, and she has remembered me down through the years, and that she has met millions of people. She has taught millions of people, and those millions of people have taught more people because I have taught teachers. So I know that her legacy continues. And whenever you meet her, now that they've opened up the gallery in her name at the South Shore Cultural Center,
Yes.
and they had the grand opening, and we went there, and she was handing out these little these little pamphlets
Booklets.
that make you ashamed because they ask the question, what will your legacy be?
Yes.
And something is required of you, something is expected of you. So even if you are not looking to leave a legacy, even if it has not occurred to you to even entertain the thought, you know when you leave Dr. Burroughs that you are supposed to be doing something. And if you are not doing anything, you are well aware of that, and you will be aware of that. If you run into her again, she's probably going to hand you another one of those brochures.
Absolutely.
So your legacy is well assured in this volume. You don't have to do another thing. Just come around and tell us about this. Just tell us about the contents of this work. Be sure that young people, as well as people who appreciate art, already make sure that young people get this, because
Yes.
they're taking art out of the schools
Yes.
and music out of the
Yes.
schools. How will the children be transformed if they have no exposure, if they don't live in an environment where art is valued?
Yes, because like Dr. Barrows, it was more than just art. I advocate when someone buys a picture, they're buying the culture. They're investing in the culture, and they're investing in more than just art. And when they rob the young people of art in the schools, they're robbing them of a significant part of their culture.
And their identity.
Yes.
Yes. And of course, at the Southside Community Arts Center, not only do you have art exhibits, but you have classes, because
We have
I
classes.
myself have had brought students down and had, we did a photography class down there. We did what's this thing where the students like to do the graffiti all over everything? Airbrush.
Airbrush.
Yeah, we had an airbrush instructor, and we gave airbrush, and we did videography and photography. And the interesting thing was that we found that young people who had nothing but maybe a fleeting interest in any of this turned out to do very well. We got photography, like it looked as though a professional had handled these cameras. We got some products that were unbelievable. So that is just an untapped resource that in our schools right now, among those students who are, who have the reading scores and all of this kind of stuff, you have genius that is just vegetating in
Yes.
those classrooms because there's no outward expression for their own inward creativity. But you offer classes.
We offer photography, computer graphics, film, painting, and drawing. And I don't care who you are, doctor, attorney, nurse, someone that picks up the garbage. Everyone has a creative side in them. I mean, painting, literary, dance, or music. I don't care who you are on this earth. There's a creative bone in you. But society has shut down the art soul, saying, oh, why do you want to be an artist? Why do you want to be a musician? Why do you want to write poetry? There's no money in that. And that's not true, because there's other forms of art, like painting or drawing or even the visual arts. There are people designing backdrops. There's any magazine you're reading, those ads have to be laid out and designed for music. So when it has to play music or write music or create music for anything they see on TV, even the commercials. Literary, poetry. So there are people out here with a creative side, but society has shut that down because everyone thinks they can't make music, cannot make money. Luckily, both of my parents were artists. So they never influenced me or never told me, oh, don't go into the arts because that's not a career. You can't make money. When I graduated from the University of Illinois, my degree was in graphic design and fine art. And I designed the windows for Carson's for 8 years, and then I was at Carson's 10 years. 8 years, I designed the windows. I was a display manager. I became an executive. My last 2 years at Carson's, I was assistant buyer and fashion coordinator. So I booked the models, I pulled the clothes, and I worked between advertising and the fashion office for laying out the catalogs. So just from my art background that people think you cannot make money on, that was my career. So people, if you think there's no money in the arts, there's quite a bit of money in the arts. I mean, look at Tyler Perry. He writes those plays. He directs movies. All that is art right there. People that design buildings, architect. I was in the A&A college, art and architecture. In order to be an architect, you have to take drawing. You have to take drafting. All that's the arts. The furniture we sit on, someone had to design it. The clothes we wear, someone had to design it. And the core for all that is art. So people always shutting down artists. Oh, you know, what upsets me, parents tell their kids, oh, you can't make money in the arts. Become an attorney, become a social worker. I mean, art is social work, believe me.
It is social work.
Yes.
So, and I feel so that Southside Community Arts Center is there to educate not only students, but adults too. So we have student classes and we have adult classes.
Well, that's one myth. You can't make any money out of from a profession or education in art. The other myth is you can't afford to buy art.
Yes.
I would say you can't afford not to, because of all the things that you can have. You know, I mean, we have to live indoors and eat food and wear clothes and have health care and have vehicles or transportation here and there. But the thing is, your environment is where you spend most of your time.
Right.
You don't spend as much time in anything that you own, in any article of clothing, in any vehicle that you own, in anything else as you do your own home. And if that environment is not an environment that gives you a sense, a tranquil sense, a sense of peace, if you can't come to that environment after having dealt with all of the madness that is outside of those doors, or even the madness that comes across that television screen, if there is nowhere that you can look and see something beautiful, and I'm not talking about something, some piece of furniture. I'm talking about if there's nowhere that you can look and see something beautiful, something inspirational, something that makes you wonder, how in the world did this person do this? Or what made this person think of this? If you cannot live with that kind of environment, then you are living with a lower level of oxygen than you need. You really don't have as much air as you need to be breathing.
When I was coming up, there was art and music always in my home. I mean, art on the walls, music playing. So I thought that's how everyone lived.
Yes.
And I used to visit my friends. Some friends, I'd see blank walls or white walls. And I'm like, you know, and it was not an uplifting feeling. So I would say, well, how come you guys don't have any type of artwork on the walls? And this is like I'm 10, 11, 12 years old.
You didn't know.
I didn't know because I thought that's how everyone lived, with some kind of artwork in their home. So then it was kind of an environment where I had to leave to get back home. My parents were collectors. You know, I'm a collector, and when I come home from, I always say a hard day's work, if it's working at the art center doing art appraising, I come home to my house and look at the artwork on my walls, and it puts me at peace.
Oh, yes.
No matter what
Your
painting
house is
or what
gorgeous.
sculpture I look at, it just makes me relax and just sit there and enjoy my home.
You just
Yes.
walk around your house and say, do I live here?
Yes.
Do I live here? You know, because it is wonderful to be surrounded by beautiful things. And there's no substitute for being surrounded by beautiful things. And beautiful things don't come in the form of things that are manufactured. Because things that are manufactured become obsolete. They go out of style. At one point, you know, they had the furry furniture with the panthers on the sides, and you know, so you get the manufactured items which come and go. These commodities come and go. Art has an interminable lifespan. It lasts forever. It doesn't fit any particular decade. In fact, I looked at some things in your book. You even went to the Wall of Respect. Now, I don't know how you got that.
Yes.
The Wall of Respect used to be at 43rd and Langley. I don't know if it still is there.
No,
it's gone.
It's gone.
It was not
But
gone.
there were some local artists who just decided to beautify the community, and they put a mural, and there were many murals put on the wall so that
Yes.
people would have something to contemplate, something to think about.
And conversation.
Exactly,
Yes.
to communicate and to contemplate.
You know, living with art is more than that. It's a part of you, because the painting or the sculpture you look at, it becomes a part of you. You look at that every day. And I just think of some of the work that Debra does. It becomes part of you. I'm sure people go home and say, "My little girl," or
They
you know,
talk to her work.
yes, yes, because it's a part of you, and it's robbing the kids of knowing that joy. And
Right.
as Diane so eloquently put, art branches out into all endeavors of life.
That's right.
And when you cut that off, you're cutting off a whole segment of what a child could be.
What do you say to people when people tell you that, Deborah? When they say, "Oh, I can't afford art," as though they're not entitled to have it, as though it's a luxury. You know, this is something that you get after after you've gotten old and retired and paid all your bills, and you own your house outright and all of that. Now you might be able to have some discretionary income that you can use to buy luxuries. What do you tell? How do you tell people that art is not a luxury; it's a necessity?
Well, first of all, one of the most touching stories I've heard from one of my collectors, a lady named Carla Leggett. She has a niece, and her niece might be 6 or 7 years old, and she has several pieces of my work, maybe 4 or 5. And her niece, whenever she's over and somebody rings the bell, her niece goes to the door with her, and as soon as they enter her space, she takes charge of leading them around to tell them about the art. She is so 6 or 7 years old. She is so proud of the artwork that well, first of all, let me take you on a tour. She takes them, she tells them about the work. She's the little curator in the house. Now, that touches me not because a child likes my work. It touches me because this little girl, growing up with this kind of reference point for who she can be or who she is in the world, like Diane, you grew up with art on the walls. You know what your value is. You know the people you come from are capable, that they are creative, that they put beauty into the world, that it's not all about just what you see on the news. And so when you grow up understanding who you are, and when you grow up with that sense of value, you grow up with something to protect. So when you are confronted with all of those different stages of peer pressure and all of that, you sort of have a barometer of your value and how far you will go and how far you won't go and what you expect the world to give you in return for, what it is you're willing to work for. So that's one of the most touching things I've ever heard, to have a child to feel that way about my art. But it is a necessity. It's not just a luxury. I have as my narrative, sort of, a notion of beauty and how the mind perceives beauty and so forth. But there are many messages in my work, but I don't beat you over the head with the message, because the first thing I want to do is just nourish you, just give you a moment where you can just absorb beauty and have some balance to all of the ugliness that comes with life and war and some of the subjects that are constantly going across the screen from the news. So that's the first thing I want to do, is just create beauty as a way of offsetting ugliness. That's the first thing but there's always a message in my art, and there's a narrative to my art, and there's a narrative to my life as an artist. I am very much committed to continuing Dr. Burroughs' legacy, but I'm not going to build a museum to do it. My work is in a different day and age, and I'm going to go about that work. But the most important thing I want to accomplish with my life as an artist, because this is not a hobby for me, will give up any material thing I own to stay in it, might give up some biology if I can just keep enough to work with. I am willing to give my life for art. The reason being is that when you say that children are cut off from art in the schools and all of that, it seems that way. But like Diane pointed out, creativity is used in every facet of life. It is used to define our children. It is used to tell them who they are not, who they can be, who they cannot be, and the media and the different genres, because the media is a form of art. Marketing is a form of art. Mm-hmm. All of these things that involve creativity are very much reaching our children. That's why they all dress alike. That's why their pants are all down. Wherever you go that you can find young black people, you can find that look. Why? Because some creative person, some artistic person has communicated the message to them that this is the way, this is your uniform for if you want to look cool. This is your uniform for if you want to look like a thug, or if you want to look like a player. We all have our uniforms, and if you can go all across this country and you will find children with these uniforms on, that's all communicated to them through art. When they drop out of school to sell drugs or whatever, those are messages that they're getting from videos, from people who know how to use creativity. So my work as an artist, I realize, is to use my creativity, not just in visual art, but in whatever form. Writing, which I'm working on now, I'm working on a screenplay, but in whatever form I can, to reach them on the level they're on, not on my level. They don't want to hear about the history of this and that. They're in this moment now. So on the level that they're already on, I want to reach in there with a message that says you have something to protect, that says you have beauty, that shows them what they can be, or how to have a blueprint, how to think about things, which is most important. Just how to think about things, because they're surrounded by peers who are telling them all kinds of things to do, and nobody wants to step outside and not be accepted as a child. So they need messages that can help them to sort of navigate all of these different stages of life, but yet, hold on to some sense of themselves, at the same time not feel like they're being ostracized, because you got to recognize children need other children. But like I said, my role as an artist is to just bring some different messages in there. Hip hop, and I wouldn't criticize any form of art. Hip hop, rap, whatever. I love some of it, but also I recognize the power of that medium is not being used certainly for the best, for the best of our children. By and large, it's not being used in that way. I know that children, if you put that same beat and those same words and told them something about science, they would still embrace it. They don't have to be drugged down and called, and the women the women now, the gym shoes are revered, and the women, the vessels of life, that give you life, the vessel that gives you life, a young boy can look at and completely disrespect that image, but revere a hubcap, revere a gym shoe. So that's been done to them by creative people who had a product to sell and who wanted to present that message. But like she said, there are so many ways to bring art to our children. And we just have to recognize that that art is being brought to them, but it's not being brought to them by the people who have their best interests.
That's
at
right.
You
heart.
know, Dr. Perham, a black psychologist, and I quote him in my book, he said, "We must use our art as a reference point." And this is what you're saying. And that reference point can be positive,
That's right.
or it can be negative, but it's all powerful. And we must assure that that is a positive reference point. And those things about it that's negative be corrected, because we can't just let it go on. We are the keepers of the culture, which in turn is the keepers of our people.
Right.
And when we see them going awry, we must step in and say, something else rhymes with B
Right.
other than B.
Right.
You know, we must train them. And as Debra so eloquently said, you know, children absorb. They absorb whatever you put out there. And if you put something positive out there, they will absorb it. By the same token, they absorb that which is negative. Promote them.
Debra has given us the best key to that. Someone is marketing that. I mean, you know, children are born into the world, and we've only got a few minutes. I wish we had more. Children are born into the world with a predisposition to be inferior or to be vulgar or obscene.
True.
And if you're going to if you're going to train up children in this way, then you can expect that outcome. And when she's saying that what we have to do is we have to have a line of defense. There will be those people who will work for the other team. They will corrupt our children. They will deface our children. They will misguide our children. But we must have somebody on our team who will guide the children, who will elevate the children.
Well, you know, a lot of these rap stars and hip-hop people, they feel as though they are guiding our children because they are telling
But
their
they've
story.
been misguided.
True, and instead of cutting it off and say, okay, I know the way I live now, I know what I went through, let me put something more positive out there. And I've turned my life around, kind of. I'm making all this money. So a lot of these teens think a lot of these rap stars are making a lot of money, but they aren't. They're only making so many pennies per cut or per song. A lot of the time, most of their money has to go to the manager, the record company. Then a lot of time, there's front money. These entertainers, these rappers, get money up front to buy these Bentleys and these Rolls Royces and these
To project
Ferraris
a certain
to
image.
project the image. But then when they get in the money from their songs, they don't get the money. It has to go
Yes.
to the people that loan them the money or fronting the money
Well,
off.
we have less than 3 minutes, so anybody who wants to come in here and try to round this out is welcome to do it. But we do understand that these children are products of generations that came before them, and this work of corrupting our children goes on 24/7.
True.
And so consequently, if we are going to do anything to balance the scales so that we will at least have some survivors, then we're going to have to work at it.
I
And
feel
what
as though-
the Southside Community Arts Center is doing is part of that struggle. What Debra Hand is doing is part of that struggle. What you are doing is part of that struggle. And Dr. Burroughs has put it out there, even talking about the people that you are just naming as being the ones who have had a heavy hand in some of that corruption, Dr. Burroughs would ask them, what will your legacy be? Will your legacy be that you owned a Bentley that became obsolete because it was not the latest model? You know, at some point, the material things that you acquire lose their value, become obsolete, and if that is what you want your legacy to be, then you're entitled to have that. But that's not what a great people have come into being to do. Well, I guess I used up all the time. I thank you
Thank you.
You're
so
welcome.
much. I thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Deborah Hand. I thank you, Diane Dinkins-Carr. I thank you, Daniel Texidor. I love you so. You told me that one of my friends, Ted Davis, was a photographer. Do you know I never knew that?
Yes, absolutely. He's